Why does the American food system produce two entirely different kinds of shoppers? Many people think it is a matter of choice. That the wealthy shopper leaving Whole Foods with a canvas bag full of fresh produce, and the working-class shopper leaving Dollar General with a plastic bag full of frozen entrees and processed snacks are making individual decisions about what to eat, and that if the working-class shopper simply chose better, the outcomes would be different. That framing has been the official American explanation of obesity for 4 decades. It is the framing on cable news. It is the framing in health class. It is the framing in the doctor's office. It is also on the specific data that actually explains the pattern wrong. The two shoppers are not making different choices about the same food supply. They are living inside 2 different food supplies. One food supply is built around real ingredients, whole grains, fresh produce, meat that was not restructured in a factory, and time to prepare it. The other food supply is built around shelf life, calorie density, hyperpalatability, and the ability to be eaten in a car between 2 shifts. The wealthy shopper has access to both supplies and chooses the first. The working-class shopper has access to only the second and is then told by every institution in American society that the outcome of that limited access is a personal moral failing. This video is about the specific mechanics of how the American food system was quietly divided into 2 tiers, why one tier is producing an obesity epidemic concentrated in the households that cannot escape it, and how other developed nations have refused to structure their food supply this way at all. Start with what the 2 food supplies actually look like in practice. In a wealthy zip code in suburban Boston, the primary grocery destinations are Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, and a farmer's market that opens on Saturday mornings. The average shopper leaves those stores with produce sourced from named regional farms, meat labeled with a specific ranch of origin, dairy from grass-fed herds, and packaged goods with ingredient lists short enough to read in a single glance. The prices are meaningfully higher than at conventional supermarkets. The shopper can absorb those prices because household income is high enough that grocery cost is a small percentage of monthly spending. In a low-income zip code in Memphis, 60 miles from the nearest Whole Foods, the primary grocery destinations are a Dollar General, a Family Dollar, and a corner convenience store. The shelves in those stores are stocked overwhelmingly with packaged, canned, frozen, and shelf-stable foods engineered for long transport, extended storage, and consistent margin. Fresh produce, when it exists, is limited to a small display of the least perishable items, apples, potatoes, and bag salad, priced higher per pound than at the supermarket the shopper cannot reach. Meat is largely frozen. Dairy is often ultra-pasteurized. The ingredient lists on the packaged goods run 20 to 40 items long and require a chemistry background to parse. The 2 shoppers are not shopping at the same country. They're shopping in different countries that happen to share a flag. The food supply available to one is genuinely different from the food supply available to the other, and the health outcomes that follow from that difference are as different as the food supplies themselves. The technical name for the second country is a food desert. The United States Department of Agriculture defines a food desert as a low-income area in which a significant portion of the population lives more than 1 mile from the nearest supermarket in urban areas, or more than 10 miles in rural areas. According to USDA analysis, approximately 53.6 million Americans, 17.4% of the population, currently live in low-income and low-access food areas. That is 1 in every 6 Americans. 9 of the 10 states with the largest food desert populations are located in the American South. Mississippi ranks first, with 30% of its residents living in food desert conditions. New Mexico follows at 29%. Arkansas at 26%. Among large metropolitan areas, 32% of Memphis residents live in food desert census tracts. The 2008 USDA congressional study that first mapped these areas documented that food deserts are overwhelmingly concentrated in low-income neighborhoods and disproportionately impact Black and Hispanic communities. The condition is not accidental. It is the accumulated result of 40 years of supermarket location decisions that followed household income upward, corner store business models that filled the vacated retail space with the cheapest possible calorie inventory, and municipal zoning that permitted the concentration of fast food outlets in exactly the neighborhoods that were losing their grocery access. The map of American food deserts, laid on top of the map of American poverty, laid on top of the map of American obesity, produces 3 overlapping shapes that are so nearly identical that treating them as separate phenomena is a form of statistical denial. There is a second mechanism dividing the 2 food supplies that operates below the level of geography. It is time. Real food, whole grains, fresh vegetables, unprocessed proteins, requires preparation. A pot of beans has to soak overnight and simmer for hours. A whole chicken has to be broken down, seasoned, and cooked. A batch of vegetables has to be washed, chopped, and cooked before they are eaten. Every one of these processes is minutes of active work in a kitchen. The household with 2 working parents pulling 12-hour shifts between them, plus a commute, plus childcare, plus the extra job the household needs to make rent, does not have those minutes. The household is exhausted before it walks in the door. The evening in that household is not a preparation window. It is a survival window. In that window, the food that gets eaten is the food that requires the least amount of remaining energy to produce. That food is by design ultra-processed. It is the frozen entree that goes from freezer to microwave in 8 minutes. It is the pasta jar sauce combination that requires only boiling water. It is the cereal that requires only milk. It is the fast food that requires only a phone. The ultra-processed food is not a moral failure. It is a rational response to a household schedule that has been engineered by economic pressure to make anything else impossible. The wealthy household purchases time by hiring housekeepers, ordering meal kits, and eating at restaurants where someone else did the preparation. That purchase time is what allows the wealthy household to eat real food. The working class household cannot purchase that time. So the working class household does not eat that food. The choice was never actually available in the way the moralizing narrative pretends it was. The third mechanism dividing the food supplies is pure calorie arithmetic. In the current American food economy, the cheapest possible calorie is invariably an ultra-processed one. A bag of white bread contains approximately 800 calories and costs $2. 2,500 calories per dollar. A pound of ground beef contains approximately 1,200 calories and costs $6 to $8. Between 150 and 200 calories per dollar. A head of broccoli contains approximately 140 calories and costs $2 to $3. Between 50 and 70 calories per dollar. When a household is choosing between paying rent and feeding children, the household chooses the calories that cost the least per calorie. The bag of white bread wins that calculation every time it is run. The head of broccoli loses. The pattern is not confusion about nutrition. The pattern is that the American food system has structured its pricing so that the healthiest food is the most expensive food per calorie, and the most damaging food is the cheapest food per calorie. That structure was not inevitable. It is the result of specific federal agricultural subsidies that have flowed for 80 years to corn, soy, wheat, and dairy at scales that have distorted the entire retail price structure of American food. Corn syrup is cheap because corn is subsidized. Vegetable oil is cheap because soy is subsidized. Wheat flour is cheap because wheat is subsidized. Every ultra-processed food that dominates the American diet is built from those subsidized commodities. Every real food that has been priced out of the working class shopping cart competes against those subsidized commodities without subsidy of its own. The federal government has spent decades making the wrong food artificially affordable and letting the right food remain naturally expensive. The working class household eats the food the government made cheap. That was the design. This is the point where the data lands with force that the moralizing narrative cannot absorb. The counties with the highest food desert prevalence in the United States are the same counties with the highest obesity rates. Obesity rates run 40 to 60% higher in counties with the lowest fruit and vegetable availability compared to counties with the highest. Life expectancy in food deserts is more than 2 years lower than in high-income areas with easy access to healthy food. A 2023 study in JAMA Oncology documented associations between food deserts and food swamps, defined as areas oversaturated with unhealthy food outlets and obesity-related cancer mortality. Type 2 diabetes rates rise sharply in populations consuming diets high in ultra-processed foods and low in fiber. And type 2 diabetes rates in low-income American communities have risen at rates that would be considered a public health emergency if they were occurring in any other national context. The map of American obesity, laid over the map of American income, produces a chart in which the highest obesity rates coincide almost exactly with the lowest income levels. The correlation is not a coincidence. Obesity in the United States is not distributed evenly across the population. It is distributed along the exact lines of the 2 food supplies. The household with access to the real food supply are, on average, thinner, healthier, and living longer. The households restricted to the industrial food supply are, on average, heavier, sicker, and dying sooner. The obesity epidemic is not a national problem in the sense that all Americans face it. The obesity epidemic is a specific problem faced overwhelmingly by the Americans without the income to buy their way out of the food supply the country built for them. For 4 decades, the dominant American public health message about obesity has emphasized personal responsibility. Eat less, move more, make better choices. The message is not entirely wrong. Individual behavior does matter. But the message has been used, at scale, to obscure the structural conditions that make individual behavior nearly impossible to change. A person told to eat more fresh vegetables when the nearest fresh vegetable is 8 miles away and the nearest fast food outlet is 2 blocks away is being given advice that assumes a food environment the person does not live in. A person told to cook from scratch when the person works 2 jobs and comes home to children who need to eat in the next 20 minutes is being given advice that assumes a time budget the person does not have. A person told to buy the healthier option when the healthier option costs 3 times as much per calorie is being given advice that assumes a household budget the person cannot access. The personal responsibility framing is not a mistake. It is a rhetorical tool that transfers accountability from the food system to the individual eating from it. It allows a country that has built 2 entirely different food environments for its wealthy citizens and its poor citizens to attribute the health outcomes of the poor citizens to their own moral failure rather than to the environment the country constructed around them. The framing serves specific interests. It protects the agricultural subsidy structure. It protects the retail location decisions of supermarket chains. It protects the marketing budgets of the ultra-processed food manufacturers. It protects everyone who profits from the current food supply structure by shifting the blame for its outcomes onto the people the structure has failed. The person told to make better choices in a food desert is being asked to solve, individually, a problem the country produced systematically. Other developed nations have refused to allow their food supplies to divide this way, and the data shows what happens when a country makes a different choice. In 2005, Japan enacted the Shokika Basic Act, a federal law that mandated food education in every Japanese school. Children learn to identify ingredients, prepare traditional dishes, and understand the relationship between food and health beginning in elementary school. Japanese school lunches are prepared fresh, on-site, from whole ingredients, and served to every student regardless of household income. The result is a national food culture in which real food remains the default and ultra-processed food remains a minority category. Japanese ultra-processed food consumption is significantly lower than American levels. Japanese obesity rates run at approximately 4 to 5% of the adult population. American obesity rates run above 40%. The difference is not genetic. It is not disciplinary. It is not because Japanese people have superior willpower. It is because Japanese law and Japanese urban design have preserved a food environment in which real food is available, affordable, and normalized across every income level. Germany has followed a different but similarly protective path. German food labeling laws require detailed disclosure of processing methods and additives. German fresh food markets operate weekly in nearly every German municipality, subsidized by local governments and integrated into daily shopping routines. German bakeries producing bread with 3 to 5 ingredients remain economically viable because German consumer culture treats industrial bread with suspicion rather than acceptance. A recent longitudinal study of German children published in 2025 documented that each 10% increase in ultra-processed food consumption was associated with a 12% higher risk of overweight. And Germany has used data of this type to actively restrict marketing of ultra-processed foods to children. American food policy has done none of these things. American children are marketed too aggressively by ultra-processed food manufacturers. American school lunches are frequently procured from the same industrial suppliers that dominate the retail food environment. American federal law contains no equivalent of shokiku. The result is not accidental. The result is what happens when a country decides that food is a market outcome rather than a public health responsibility and allows the outcome to distribute along class lines that other countries chose to prevent. All of this lands at a single observation. The American obesity epidemic is not a mystery. It is not primarily a story about willpower. It is not primarily a story about individual choices. It is the predictable public health outcome of a food system that has been quietly divided into 2 tiers, in which the tier occupied by wealthy Americans preserves the possibility of eating real food, and the tier occupied by working-class Americans systematically restricts that possibility. The division is enforced by geography, by time, by price, by subsidy, and by cultural framing that treats the outcomes of the division as individual moral failures rather than as systemic public health outcomes. Other developed nations have chosen to prevent this division through law, urban planning, and cultural policy. The United States has chosen to permit it, defend it, and blame the households living inside it for the health consequences it produces. The obesity map is the poverty map because the food map is the poverty map. The households eating ultra-processed food are not choosing to eat it in the sense that a wealthy shopper is choosing between organic and conventional. They are eating what the American food system left available in their zip code, at their income level, in their available time, at their available price. The country that produced that food system is not going to fix it by telling those households to try harder. The country that produced that food system is going to fix it, if it fixes it at all, by acknowledging that the food environment is not neutral, that it distributes health outcomes along class lines by structural design, and that the solution is at the level of federal agricultural policy, urban planning, and school nutrition rather than at the level of individual grocery lists. None of that acknowledgement is currently in progress. In the meantime, the two food supplies continue to operate side by side. The two shoppers continue to leave two different stores with two different bags, and the health outcomes continue to accumulate in exactly the households where they were always going to accumulate. The question worth sitting with is not whether Americans should eat better. The question is whether the country is willing to build a food environment in which eating better is actually possible for the households currently trapped in the food environment it built instead. Drop your honest answer below. Not for performance, for the record of what the receipt has been telling us in two different zip codes for a very long time now.